Good day everyone! I am Chanmi Escultura from BE Ed 21 and today I will discuss about literature focusing on Bicol literature. The discussion will revolve around the definition of literature, the two general types of literature, the Bicolanos' definition of literature, the characteristics of Bicol literature, and the Bicolanos' popular literature. So what is literature? It comes from the Latin word litera, which means letter or an acquaintance with letters. According to Oxford Advanced Learners English Dictionary, literature can be defined as pieces of writing that are valued as works of art, especially novels, plays, and poems. And according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary and Thesaurus, literature is the body of written works produced in a particular language, country, or age, or the body of writings on a particular subject. So it is difficult to offer a precise definition of literature, but we shall give a working definition of it in line with what we are studying. And literature is also a product of particular culture that concretizes man's array of values, emotion, actions, and ideas, meaning it is a creation of human experiences that tells about people and their world. There are two most general types of literature, the fiction and non-fiction. Fiction is literature created through the author's imagination, while non-fiction is literature based on fact. Fiction includes poems, stories, plays, and novels, while non-fiction includes such types of literature as newspaper articles, editorials, textbooks, and legal documents. So I will no longer elaborate these types of literature because I know that we are very familiar with this. Now let us view literature based from the perspectives of Bicolano artists. Short of a distinctive definition of Bicol literature, writers who attended the 4th Quadrennial Bicol Writers Conference, Pagsurot Bicol at the Ateneo de Naga University took comfort with the fact that Bicol is in their hearts and minds when they weave pieces of literary work. According to Marne Quilates, Bicol literature is poetry, novel, or fiction written about Bicol, not necessarily in Bicol language, not necessarily published in Bicol, and not necessarily by a Bicolano. Meaning, if it's a short story and the setting is in Bicol or its character is a Bicolano, meaning the literature is about Bicol. By the way, Quilates is a native of Daraga Albay with 3 books of poetry in his name, translator of the works of national artists Rio Alma and Bienvenido Lumbera, and he is also a Palanca awardee. Next, an indie filmmaker and novelist, Alvin Yapan, who hails from Pili, Camarines Sur, agrees that Bicol literature is any literary work pertaining to Bicol and added that it must also be an instrument in cultivating the culture of the region. Next is Tito G. Valiente. He is a member of the Manunuri ng Pelikulang Pilipino or MPP, and he is also a scholar of Japanese films. He is a Business Mirror columnist, and he is the director of the Institute of Bicol Culture History of Ateneo de Naga University. So, according to him, he drew his definition of Bicol literature from historical perspective. He said that Bicol literature has evolved through time and space histories. It is always a literature of displacement. He said that we are displaced because we are colonized and uprooted from the original culture in a way that it created a loss which is magical. Meaning, kahit pa nasakop tayo and hindi natin nakamtan yung kultura na original Pinoy na walang impluensya mula sa iba, sabi ni Valiente, it created a loss sa part nating Pinoy or Bicolano. Still, it was magical kasi talagang historical yon and malaking parte na siya ng history natin. And now, here is the characteristics of Bicol literature. Its roots were from ancient folkways. Poetry includes charm, exploiting the possibilities of words in folk poems and narratives. Themes specifically deals about mythical content, and the literature of Bicolanos are bound with early historical fragments which form part of the people's lives. The Bicol people have a writing tradition with roots in its ancient folkways. In 1890, the first Bicol newspaper, An Parabareta, was published by Mariano Perfecto, who also established the first printing press called Imprenta de Nuestra Señora de Peñafrancia. Now let's take a look at Bicolanos literature, and corridos is one of our literature. So what is corridos? Corridos or metrical romances became the main reading fare for many years. In time, Bicol corridos were written, and the most popular was Magamang Pobre by Rosalio Imperial. Rosalio Imperial is a Bicolano educator and writer. He was also the late mayor of Naga Kamsur from January to December 1941. His piece was published in Naga City. Next is Zarzuela, and we also call this opera. Zarzuela is a theatrical play that contains musical acts. The Zarzuela did not escape the Bicol's questioning bent. Asislo Jimenez, who wrote the Pagkamuot sa Banwang Tinubuan, demonstrated that national change can be affected through armed revolt. Asislo Jimenez, he is a politician and a writer. He was also the late mayor of Sorsogon City, and he is known for his writings, the Zarzuela, and that is titled An Pagkamuot sa Banwang Tinubuan. Another is Rawit Dawit, a narrative poem. I know we are very familiar with this, so I will no longer elaborate. Four poets and their work stand out. First is An Pana or the Arrow, written by Manuel Fuentebella. Pag-auro ang Guyong or Perseverance by Clemente Alejandria. Balus-Balusana or Retribution by Eustaquio Dino. And Hare Dali or No Don't by Mariano Goyena. Great sensitivity and exquisite images are marks of these poems, reaching up to lyricism. Here are the authors and their piece. Contemporary writing has begun to burst with creative energy. The writers now possess the courage to deal with big themes. It began with Francisco Penones Jr., who sounded a clarion call in his poem, An Upon sa Ibalon kan Mahali an Maskara. Society, he declared, is the war that brought hunger and poverty to the land. On the other hand, Merlin de Bobis, in a masterly poetic drama titled Daragang Magayon, overturns the passive maiden in the legend and makes her decisive to do her part in changing society. So, the Bicolano can write memorable and significant pieces. The native literacy tradition has been resurrected or restored to life and kept. Know that it is important to know and study literature because it is like looking at the mirror of life kahit pa gaano nakatagal, kasi through that we are able to see man's experiences, know his innermost feelings and thought, kasi nga literature is a reflection. And aside from that, we learn the culture of people across time and space, and literature is something that we can look back, we can read, we can watch again and again. Thank you for listening. Now, the next topic will be discussed by Jason Marbida. It's about self-publishing.
We are done with the literature, so now let's proceed. By the way, I am Jason Marbida from Group 5 of BEd 21. I'll be discussing to you now about self-publishing. So as we know, the becoming a popular literature of a certain literary piece starts when it was being published. Now, I will be focusing my discussion about the major types of publishing, specifically the self-publishing. So what does self-publishing means? When we say self-publishing, it refers to an author completing the entire publishing process, including printing, editing, proofreading, formatting, cover design, and book marketing on their own or with their own resources. So this is done without the help of a traditional publisher or a publishing company. Self-publishing is also the process of undertaking all responsibilities related to publishing a book. If you decide to self-publish, you will be in charge of edits, cover design, formatting, and releasing and marketing your book. And of course, being in charge doesn't mean you have to do all of this yourself. You can hire an editor, a cover designer, etc. to help you out. But you'll arrange and pay for these services out of your own pocket. This allows you to maintain ownership of your book's rights and royalties when you self-publish, which is exactly why so many people take this road. Further, self-publishing means you pay to have your work published and may manage some or all of the other parts of the book publishing process, such as editing, cover design, marketing, and production. If you pay a fee to have your work published, your work is considered self-published. So that is what do you mean by self-publishing. Now that we have defined what the self-publishing is, let's now talk about its procedure or steps. So what are the procedure or steps in self-publishing a book? We will now talk about the different step-by-step procedure of self-publishing a book. So the first step is, step 1 is writing. This might sound obvious, but we can overlook the writing process. Picking up every day and putting in the work to write a book is no easy feat. Writing a book is a huge accomplishment, of course. If you made it that far, we hope you take a moment to stop and congratulate yourself on a job well done. Now, let's get ready to share it with the world. So, step 2 is the book editing. This is where you will be editing your own book written. So there are a few different types of editing, and each serves a unique purpose for a manuscript. You'll have to assess your work to determine what level of editing to start with. So there are things to consider when it comes to editing your book. The first is the manuscript critic. This is a high-level examination of your manuscript. It looks at things like narrative voice, plot, and character development. With this type of critic, editors give feedback on items that will help improve your overall story. So the next thing to consider is comprehensive edit or line edit. It is a comprehensive edit addresses structural issues similar to a manuscript critic, but it also involves a line edit which looks closely at writing style and language. With a line edit, an editor focuses on the use of language to communicate your story to a reader. Now the third thing is the copy edit. A copy edit is often confused with a line edit, but they are very different steps in the editing process. A copy edit reviews technical flaws, issues with spelling, grammar, and punctuation, and looks for internal inconsistencies throughout the text. Lastly is the proofread. This is the final step in the editing process. A proofreader examines the final copy of the manuscript, usually after typesetting, for any awkward page breaks, and he or she might perform some light copy editing. So those are the things that you should consider when it comes to editing your book. So now let's proceed to the step 3 of self-publishing, which is the book design. The next step is designing your book, of course. There are two main steps in the book design process. This include interior design and the book cover design. Interior design might not sound like the most exciting part of the design process, but it is necessary to create a professionally published book. Typesetting, commonly referred to as book formatting, has rules with pedos, arpans, hyphens, and various other elements within a book to make it more readable, ensuring a pleasant reading experience for your audience. The next is the book cover design. Your book cover design is the first impression readers have of your book. While it's important to be unique, it's equally important to pay attention to what comparable covers in your genre look like. Now the step 4 is the book metadata. What exactly the book metadata and why is it important? Book metadata may sound complicated, but it's relatively straightforward. It consists of all the information that describes your book, including your title, subtitle, price, trim size, other name, book description, and many more. So, therefore, book metadata includes your book title. Writers often ask for tips on how to come up with a book title. A good rule of thumb is to follow the PINC acronym coined by Michael Hyatt. PINC acronym stands for Promise, Intrigue, Need, Content, and Content. So this will make your book title original, memorable, and searchable. So the next is the book description. The cover of your book draws a person in. The title intrigues, and the book description closes the deal. So how do you write a good book description? First, you should keep it simple and straightforward. Aim for 150 to 200 words. You should use paragraph breaks, bold, and italic formats to provide emphasis when necessary. You should also insert bold points when applicable. And lastly, you should avoid time-sensitive language like coming soon. Now the next is the ISBNs, or we call this as International Standard Book Numbers. So you're probably wondering what is an ISBN. So ISBN, or the International Standard Book Numbers, is an internationally recognized identification number similar to any product number you would find on other products you buy, like a box of cereal or a pair of shoes. You need an ISBN if you want your book to be available for sale in bookstores or with an online retailer or wholesaler. You'll want to purchase this before your book designer begins work on the cover of your book so that it can be included in the barcode. Now the next is the BISAC codes. What are the BISAC codes? BISAC codes essentially identify what your book is about, the primary genres, topics, and themes. While a reader might not be trained to search for books based on BISAC code, retailers and booksellers will use BISAC code to determine in which category to place your book on their website or where to shelve it in their bookstore. So the next step is now the publishing. Publishing, if you haven't yet, there are also various self-publishing companies to choose from. The company of Ingram Spark is one example of this. Ingram Spark provides many features that you won't find anywhere else. Ingram Spark offers indie authors and publishers the ability to create professional print books, paperback and hardcover, and ebooks. With Ingram Spark, you can self-publish a book and make it available to 40,000 plus retailers and libraries, the source and the online, through our global distribution network. And in addition, Ingram Spark authors receive 24/7 customer support, sales reporting, free publishing tools and resources, affordable advertising opportunities, discounts with outside experts on publisher services. Now, some self-publishers simply wish to print a select number of copies and not enable their title for distribution, and you can do that. However, if you're looking to reach the masses, Ingram Spark's distribution network has you covered. So, now next is now the distribution. Step 6 is distribution. Now, books distribution used to be a major stumbling block for self-published authors. They would spend weeks, months, even years writing their book. They would go through the editing, design, and printing process, and then would have no way to get it into bookstores and libraries. Now, the seventh step for self-publishing is marketing. Learning how to market a book is essential for authors. When you take the time to write, edit, and design a book, it's easy to get wrapped up in the to-do list and never stop to think about marketing until a few weeks before your publication date. This is a big mistake for self-published authors. Well, marketing is one of the last steps in our self-publishing process. It is highly suggested that you should begin thinking about your marketing strategy during the writing process. Building another platform doesn't happen overnight. Now, in terms of marketing your book, as you are doing a self-publishing, you may consider these following tactics to market. It's important to have your own website when you publish a book. This lends credibility to your name as an author and is a great place for readers to go to learn more about you, your book, your events, and more. If you hope to create an engaged audience over time, a website is the first step. Now, the next is the social media. In social media, if you aren't already on social media, then it's time to look at creating some social accounts. You don't have to be active on all social channels. Just pick 2 or 3 that you enjoy, but make sure you ask yourself, where are my readers? And the next is the advanced reader copies or the ARCs. ARCs are copies of your book that are printed in advance to generate buzz for your book. You can send ARCs to a bookseller to inquire about stocking copies for the release date or to book reviewers to gain reviews for your book before your publication date. ARCs are also used to get endorsements which can be added to the final cover of your book before printing. Next is tip sheets. A tip sheet can also be referred to as a sales sheet or a one sheet. This one-page paper contains high-level relevant information about your book. Basically, your high-level metadata such as the title, subtitle, publisher, publication date, and etc. You can send this to bookstores alongside an ARC or to the press when requesting media. Now, the next is the author events. Whether it's your book launch party or an author reading, events are a great way to connect with readers in your community. Bookstores and libraries are great options, but you should also think outside the box. What other venues might want to feature your book? Marketing your book can be fun when you take the time and effort to understand your audience and provide them with a valuable reason to join your tribe and ultimately purchase your book. Now, the last step step for self-publishing is that is you should join the indie publishing company. So I think perhaps this is an optional step for self-publishing. It just depends on you as the author. So what is the indie publishing community? The indie publishing community is a tight-knit, supportive group of creators, entrepreneurs, and go-getters. So those are the steps of self-publishing. Now, the question is, how much does it cost to self-publish a book? So the cost of self-publishing a book depends on the budget of the author itself. If an author has more budget, then the author may spend more to self-publish his book. But if only he or she has little, then the author can minimize his expenses to self-publish his book. So now let's proceed, and to proceed, allow me now to discuss the pros and cons of self-publishing. What are the cons and pros of self-publishing? Again, keep in mind that what some might consider pros and cons of self-publishing, others don't agree at all. For example, you might find that what one author thinks is a disadvantage is actually something you might consider an advantage. Each author's situation is different, and each individual brings their own set of skills, mindset, and resources. All of these affect which publishing method is right for you. If you're considering how to publish a book, it's important to note the advantages and disadvantages of self-publishing. Now, here are the main pros of self-publishing. First and foremost, self-publishing has no gatekeeper. If you want to write and publish a book, then you can do exactly that. No need to wait on permission. Next is self-publishing is a quicker process. In self-publishing, it's all on your timeline, so you can decide when exactly you'd like to write and publish your book. Unlike with a traditional book deal. So later on, we will be discussing about the traditional publishing in comparison to this self-publishing. Now the third is that self-publishing has a full creative control. In self-publishing, you oversee the entire process, and book production is all in your hands. This means that if you have a specific vision for your book, you can execute it on your own. The next is that self-publishing has higher royalty rates. Depending on which platform you use to publish your book, the royalty rates are generally higher. For example, if you publish your book on Amazon, royalty rates are as high as 70%. The next is that self-publishing builds a skill. So once you learn how to publish your book, the sky's the limit. To clarify this means that you can keep writing and self-publishing as many books as you want. And lastly, self-publishing has endless opportunities. Being able to publish your book on your own terms can open up a world of opportunities. Many self-published authors use their books to build industry authority. In fact, some self-published authors even use their book to spring into traditional publishing by getting a book deal. Or maybe your book will have more personal use, such as sharing your family's history. Whatever the reason is, the opportunities are said to be endless. So those are some of the pros of self-publishing. Now let's now talk about the cons of self-publishing. What are the cons of self-publishing? Now, Here are the main cons of self-publishing. First, self-publishing. In self-publishing, it's all on your expense. Self-published authors pay out of pocket for professionals to edit, format, and design their books. So this was also mentioned a while ago. There also may be other expenses depending on the author, such as the marketing cost. Now the next cons of self-publishing is that in self-publishing you risk selling fewer books. It isn't standard to have self-published books in any major retailer. With less visibility comes less opportunity to sell a large amount of books. It will be up to you to market your book. Now the next is that self-publishing has less support. In self-publishing, it's up to you to learn how to publish a book, and you're in charge of the entire book process from start to finish, so everything is up to you. But there is a huge self-publishing community that you can reach out to along with self-publishing companies. You can check out our review of self-publishing school to learn more about this avenue. So, as mentioned previously, you can hire a publisher from the Ingram Sparks Publishing Company. So those are some of the pros and cons of self-publishing. Now, let's have a comparison between self-publishing to the traditional publishing. But before we make the comparison between these two types of publishing, let us first define what really traditional publishing is. So when we say traditional publishing, it is the process of working with a third-party publisher to release your book. This means that you, as an author, will need to submit your work and have it selected for publication. So that is what do you mean by the traditional publishing. Now let's have a brief discussion on let's have also first the brief discussion of the pros and cons of this traditional publishing. Now, the pros of traditional publishing include that the traditional publishing has no upfront costs. Also, it can possibly sell more books. It can foster social credibility. And in traditional publishing, the publishing process is all done for you, unlike with the self-publishing that you are the one to do all the publishing process. Otherwise, you will hire an editor, an designer, and etc. And you will pay them out of your own pocket. So, in contrast, the cons of traditional publishing also include that traditional publishing is very competitive. It is also a lengthy process. It has less creative control and has lower royalty fees. And lastly, traditional publishing has only minimal marketing support. So, now, let's compare this with the self-publishing by looking in terms of their procedure or steps. So both traditional publishing and self-publishing starts by writing a book. And in traditional publishing, the next step is to submit it to a publisher, while in self-publishing, you will be the one to start the publishing process. The next is in traditional publishing, the author only hopes that it gets accepted for publication, while in self-publishing, you are the one to have your book edited, formatted, and designed. And in traditional publishing, you will get sent a contract, and publisher gets your book ready to market, which is edited, formatted, and designed. While in self-publishing, you're the one to choose where to self-publish, and you will also the one to market your own book. So those are some of the comparisons of traditional publishing and self-publishing in terms of their procedure and steps. So now let's now talk about in terms of process of the self-publishing and traditional publishing to find out their comparison. So in the self-publishing, one of the pros of self-publishing is that your book is guaranteed that it will get published, since you are the one who publishes your own book. And while in traditional publishing, it is expected to have prestige and literary awards for your book once it was being selected for publication. Now, the next process of self-publishing is that it has total creative control. While for traditional publishing, one of the pros of this is that it has backing of an editorial, design, and marketing team. Now, the next process of self-publishing is that it can get to market as fast as you want. It can also earn an average of 70% royalties for ebooks and 50% for print. While some of the pros of traditional publishing is that it has production costs are paid by the publisher as opposed to the author, and the distribution of your book can be easily done to physical bookstores in traditional publishing. So those are for the comparisons between self-publishing and traditional publishing in terms of their procedure and steps, and in terms of their process, as well as, of course, their definitions. Now, let's say, for instance, you are an author and you wrote your own book. Then you want it to be published so that it will be sent to the market for people's consumption. With this, you need to opt which publishing method will you adopt. Is it the self-publishing method or the traditional one? So in this case, you need to apply your knowledge as well as your own experiences, if you have, about these two publishing methods, so that you will be able to choose the most accurate one to publish your book, either self-publishing or traditional publishing. And for this, I have a piece of advice to you. In opting between self-publishing and traditional publishing to publish your book, you should be critical with your own decision making, so that your decision will not make you regret after. Of course, so you should be critical to decide which publishing method will you choose. So that's all for some of the comparisons between self-publishing and traditional publishing. Now, let's find out how self-publishing is considered as a popular culture. Talking about self-publishing as popular culture, and as mentioned previously, a specific literary piece, such as a book, it's becoming a popular literature once it was being published, followed by its distribution and marketing to people. And to make such literary piece or a book published, distributed, and marketed, you might opt to adopt the self-publishing method. instead of the traditional publishing method. Hence, self-publishing can be considered as popular culture in a way that it serves as a bridge towards the connections and our interactions between the world knowledge and people around the globe through literature that may be adapted to the ways of living, and that is the culture of the masses, which we literally called as the popular culture. So this is how the self-publishing related to the notion of popular culture. And that ends my presentation. I hope you learned something from my discussion about self-publishing and understanding the popular culture phenomenon. So, thank you for listening. Have a nice day ahead. God bless.
Good day everyone, I'm Sarah Jane Ainara from BEd 21 and I'm here to present our topic which is about zine. So, a very brief history of the zine is that before there was a stand Twitter, there was the fanzine created originally by scripty enthusiasts of the early 20th century who used the medium as a forum for dialogue, free from corporate editors or publishers. That same do-it-yourself ethos is what drew punks of the late 20th century to embrace fanzines as a complement to their music and as a means to challenge mainstream ideologies. Um, so in the 80s and 90s, zines became a centerpiece of movements like queercore and girl. Well, the latter of these was a critic for being primarily white and heteronormative. Overall, these movements used zines to subvert dominant and patriarchal ideologies through the sharing of lived experiences. At the core of the zine making ethos are subversion, freedom of thought, and a DIY attitude. So, as in the nature of capitalism, corporations increasingly appropriated the practice as time went on. However, even today, the zine making remains the cornerstone for marginalized voices, disseminating information and publishing creative work about uh, things they loved. So let's talk about what is a zine. So zines can be difficult to define. So the word zine is a shortened form of term fanzine. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, fanzines emerged as early as the 1930s among fans of science fiction. So zines also have roots um, in the informal underground publications that focus on the social and political activism in the 60s. By the 70s, zines were popular on the punk rock circuit. And then in the 90s, the feminist punk scene propelled the medium and include such artists as Kathleen Hanna, who produced Riot Girl out of Olympia, Washington. So, a zine is most commonly a small circulation publication of original or appropriated text and images. Most broadly, the term encompasses any self-published unique work of minority interest, usually reproduced via photocopier. So, a popular definition includes that circulation must be 5,000 or less. Although in a practice, the significant majority are produced in editions of less than 1,000. So, profit is not the primary intent of publication. There are so many types of zines, art and photography zines, literary zines, social and political zines, music zines, per zines, or which we call personal zines, travel zines, health zines, food zines, and the list goes on and on. So a zine is a self-published, not commercial print work that is typically produced in small limited batches. So zines are created and bound in many DIY ways, but traditionally, editions are easily reproduced, often by crafting an original flat and then photocopying, folding, and stapling the pages into simple pamphlets. Zines may also be sewn, taped, glued, or even exist in unbound and other non-folio formats. So the main rule is that there are no rules. So people who created zines or zinisters are likely to be more motivated by self-expression and artistic passion that they are by profit. So zines are usually inexpensive and sometimes distributed for free or in trade for other zines, goods, and services. So the history of zines is vast and fascinating. Uh, read more about it here. So zines can tough on a variety of topics from music and arts to politics, sexuality, humor, and personal memoir. So their content may be written, drawn, printed, collage, or any other form of combining words and imagery. A zine's structure may be narrative, journalistic, comic-like, or completely abstract. So let's talk about what are zines good for. So zines tend to be a bricolage of various images, text, and messages. Here is a list of just a few of the things you can do with the zine format. So first, publish sketches, drawing, and mini comics, and then match receipts with whimsical illustrations. Um, Mix words with images and textures, print lines of poetry, share a manifesto, and then the list goes on. Okay, so basically what you can include in zine is only limited by your imagination. So let's move on how to make a zine. So if you've never heard of a zine, fret not, you're in the right place. I've made a bunch of zines and contributed to friends' zines, and chances are you may have made one, two, even if you didn't know that that's what they were called. So whether you're just starting out or are a seasoned creator, zines are a great way to publish your own art, poems, writing musics, and anything else you want to express without needing anyone else permission to do so. Okay, so how is a zine different from a typical magazine? So a zine is a small circulation collage style publication with a focus on unconventional topics. Unlike a magazine, which requires an editorial team and a strict publishing schedule, a zine is typically created by a single individual or a small group of people when they feel like doing so. So what are zines used for? So zines provide a safe, independent platform of expression for underrepresented and marginalized voices, Black, indigenous, and people of color, young people, people with disabilities, the LGBTQ plus community, persecuted religious groups, and people with limited economic resources. So, the examples of magazines is that some examples include newspapers, fabric images, drawn art, stickers, washi tape, paint chips, and etc. So zines are for sharing, so remember that this will be replicated. So, think about what will show best as a copied text. If you are making a digital copy of your zine, you can use a scanner to upload your pages. So that would be all, and good day.